Hello, dear friends. Good evening. I hope you are all doing well. Today, I want to share 5 new stories from Uber drivers that we've received through email. These stories describe their encounters with something unknown and terrifying. I hope you enjoy them, and we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Also, we invite you to give us a like, subscribe to this channel, and become part of the Light Warrior community. Let's begin with the first story. I want to share a story that I personally like. Whenever I meet with my friends, I can't help but bring it up again because, in part, it makes me feel like someone special, like someone an extraordinary being wanted to protect. Although I was terrified at the time, the experience had a deeper meaning for me. This all started when I was just a simple taxi driver. I also used the Uber app because it helped me reach more passengers, and the best part was that the car was mine. I was studying in the mornings and sometimes at night. Although I was doing well, I was always interested in becoming a professional, maybe making films or telling stories like the ones grandmothers tell to scare children. I didn't think about it every day, but it was in the back of my mind. Besides, I've always been a man of faith, and I would dedicate my days to God. And so it was that one night I accepted a fare through Uber. I went to pick up the passenger and started heading to the destination they set. It was a bit far, but they agreed to pay the right fare, so it wasn't a problem. What struck me as odd was that the man sat in the back. Usually I expected this behavior from women, but not from a man who, at first glance, looked stronger than me. I turned on the music, and he recognized the singer. He told me he liked the artist, and that's how we started a conversation. He said he was a lawyer, but he never liked the idea of owning a car, even though he could easily afford one. He seemed like a nice person, and even offered me his number to be his personal driver. I could do it in the same car if I wanted, but I declined. I didn't know why, but something inside told me my answer had to be no. It was strange because the man gave me no reason to distrust him. Quite the opposite. The eerie part happened at a red light when 2 men approached. One stood in front of the car with a weapon, while the other came to my window and demanded I lower it. He ordered me to get out of the car because they were going to take it. I begged him not to do it, telling him that I made my living with that car, but he didn't care. At that moment, my passenger opened the door and ran from the car. I thought he was a coward. I had no way to defend myself. Then out of nowhere, a giant black beast appeared. It attacked the assailant, leaving him motionless on the ground. I want to give you all the details of that terrifying scene, but all I did was roll up my window and watch. The attacker's body was unrecognizable. The police and forensic team would have their hands full with that body. The beast then turned its attention to the second man standing in front of the car. He was frozen with fear, trembling from the horror he had just witnessed. He even dropped his weapon without realizing it. The second man fared much worse. The beast left his body behind, giving me a clear path, and then approached me. It nodded its head at me and disappeared into an alley. I didn't follow. I had no intention of doing so. I drove away as fast as I could, thinking about what my eyes had just witnessed. In the days that followed, I concluded that the beast was the same passenger who had run away when the attackers approached. I did some research and found out that they're called Nahuales. I had no way to confirm this, but I felt sure. Now I thank God every night for what happened, because I could have lost my life unjustly. Rarely can I say that I've had contact with beings from beyond. When I was a child, there were times when I thought I saw something or witnessed a paranormal entity, but I never had any certainty until I became a taxi driver and Uber driver. One passenger made me realize that there are many mysteries in this world, some of them wonderful and others truly terrifying. I thank God that I came out of it unharmed, even though my dreams and nightmares were forever marked by what I saw that night. I was 23 years old when it happened. I was living with my parents and my younger sister, who had just started university. I had dropped out. I wasn't very diligent in my studies, and I didn't want my parents to keep spending money on me like that. It was frustrating to live with them and hear the humiliating comments about how I wasn't doing anything with my life. That's why I decided to become a taxi driver and Uber driver. I didn't do it just to shut my father up, although I knew he was upset about my decision regarding my studies. His reaction was completely normal. I made that choice because I wanted to earn my own money so I wouldn't have to ask him every time I went out with my friends or my girlfriend. No one likes to have things held over their head, though my mother always calmed him down. Leaving that aside, I have to admit that I never imagined I would have a paranormal experience as a taxi driver. I mean, I didn't have the imagination for it. I had no idea what a ghost or a demon from hell would look like, except for how they're portrayed in movies. I didn't think about it much until that night, the night that changed everything. Not just my life, but my way of seeing it and the things I knew. I must admit that even my faith was tested, and at night I prayed to God for strength and forgiveness for thinking such uncontrollable thoughts. It was about 9 p.m. when I got a notification from the Uber app. A woman needed a ride and I accepted. She wasn't far away anyway, so I picked her up. I found it strange that she was wearing a white robe and was barefoot. She came up to the window and I confirmed she had requested the ride. What caught my attention was that she didn't seem to have a cell phone and her robe had no pockets. I have to admit I got distracted because she was very attractive and she sat in the front seat. The robe was semi-transparent, leaving little to the imagination, but that wasn't the strangest part. We were driving down the highway toward the address she had set in the app. I dared to ask her if she was headed home, and she said she hoped so. That struck me as odd, so I checked the address, and that's when I realized it was a cemetery. I didn't want to ask her if she was visiting a loved one, given what she had said earlier. She hadn't revealed anything, and I was already starting to get scared for no apparent reason. I didn't understand what was happening to my body. It was an incredibly strange sensation. A few minutes later, I gathered the courage to ask why she was going to a cemetery. She confessed that she belonged there and was hoping that by returning to her grave, she would go to a better place. I felt a chilling cold run through me, and my skin broke out in goosebumps. I had to slow down to avoid losing control of the car. If what she was saying was true, then I was in the presence of a ghost or some kind of spirit from the other side. I wouldn't even know how to describe it for sure. I asked her what she meant by that, and she told me that she had been dead for 3 months and had gotten lost, so she requested help to find her way back to the cemetery. What puzzled me most was how she managed to request an Uber without a phone. Of course, I didn't rule out the possibility that she had stolen one or discarded it before I arrived. Finally, we got to the cemetery. She got out and thanked me. Almost instantly, I got a notification from the app saying the fare had been paid by bank transfer. It was all incredibly strange. I watched her walk toward the entrance, and then she vanished into thin air, as if her body was made of smoke, and the wind just swept it away. I've never seen anything like it in my life. I was still terrified and had to wait for almost half an hour to calm down. I even shed a few tears. I didn't tell anyone about this because I didn't want them to think I was crazy, but I do want to leave this story here in writing so people know what happened. Now I want to tell a story that I know many people won't believe. They'll think it was just a dream or a hallucination, but my own judgment tells me it was something else, something I can't name, define, or explain. However, my memories allow me to tell you what happened, and I'll leave it up to the reader's interpretation. It happened at a particularly stressful and complicated time in my life. My partner was 8 months pregnant, and she could go into labor at any moment. I was a taxi driver and Uber driver, and I was doing well, to be honest, better than I had expected. Many people had given me bad advice, probably hoping I'd be scared and choose another profession, but they were wrong. They underestimated me, and now I know I'm doing better than many of them. Despite making good money every day, I was still very stressed. Anyone would be, knowing they were about to become a father. Just thinking about having a child who would be a part of me made me tremble, and seeing my wife groan in pain from the contractions made me even more anxious. My mother-in-law had moved in with us to help with whatever we needed. I appreciated her deeply. She had never left my side, even in my worst moments. She was a good mother in every sense of the word. Then came the day when everything changed. I spent weeks trying to figure out what was real and what wasn't. It was 8 p.m, and I was driving through the north side of the city. At that moment, I got a notification from the Uber app. A woman requested a ride, and I accepted the fare she offered. I went to pick her up, as I usually did. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary with her. She sat in the back but didn't stay quiet. I remember she wore a necklace with a strange pendant that she kept touching, running her fingers over the gold repeatedly. I commented that the necklace must be very special to her, or maybe it was a recent gift. She replied that thanks to that necklace, I was about to experience the worst moment of my life. And that's when everything changed. I forced a smile and tried to keep calm, asking her what she meant by that. She remained silent, which made me very uncomfortable. So I decided to focus on the road. My goal was to drop her off at her destination as quickly as possible and then head home to rest. That's when I heard her talking to someone in the back. I glanced in the rearview mirror and noticed there were two of her, as if she had a twin sister in the same outfit. But I had no idea when the second woman had gotten into the car. I slammed on the brakes and turned around to make sure my mirror wasn't playing tricks on me. Sure enough, they were both there staring at me with mocking smiles on their faces. I asked who the second woman was, and they both answered at the same time, saying they were the same person. It was all so confusing. My body was trembling uncontrollably, and my breathing grew faster with each passing second. To this day, I'm surprised I had the courage to turn back around, grab the steering wheel, and continue driving. I began to mutter prayers, asking God to protect me, reciting the prayers my mother had taught me, and begging that those women wouldn't harm me. Without realizing it, a third woman appeared beside the second one, identical to the other two. I didn't dare say anything. Then the first woman asked me why I was so quiet and if they should pay me extra since there were now three of them. I replied with a shaky voice, "No." That's when one of them, though I can't remember which, said that my head would explode when the fourth one appeared. That was the moment when pure terror took over me. The only available seat left was the front passenger seat, right next to me. I felt like my heart was about to burst out of my chest, leaving a gaping hole behind. My hands were trembling as they hovered near the door handle, ready to fling it open and throw myself out, even if it meant jumping from a moving car. It was a desperate, horrifying situation. And then the unthinkable happened. The same voice from the three women behind me asked why I was sweating so much, but this time it was the fourth woman speaking. She had appeared in the front seat next to me without me realizing it. I have no idea how it was possible. I didn't want them to hurt me. I couldn't allow my baby to be born without a father. So I slammed on the brakes as hard as I could, but the car didn't stop. Instead, it accelerated even more. Seconds later, I lost control of the wheel, and one of the women whispered in my ear, saying she wished me luck living with the memories that would haunt me from that day forward. They burst into laughter as I panicked, realizing I couldn't even open the door. That's when I saw a massive truck coming toward us. The steering wheel twisted on its own, sending the car crashing head-on into the enormous vehicle. I lost consciousness immediately. When I woke up, I was in the same place where I had originally picked up the woman. She was standing there knocking on the window. It was her, the same woman. I have no idea what happened, but there was no way I was going to let her into the car a second time. I hit the gas and sped off toward my home. When I arrived, I stayed in the driver's seat for a while, completely traumatized, shaking uncontrollably. In the back seats, I found a note that said, "Thanks for the ride," and next to it were 2 stacks of bills. So much money. I considered leaving the money there, but I needed it. And in my ignorance, I thought that such a terrifying experience deserved some sort of reward. I've never slept well since that night. I always wake up with nightmares drenched in sweat. I've seen psychologists, even witches and shamans, but nothing has worked. I know that no one will believe this story, but I can assure you that it really happened. If it were just a dream, I wouldn't have found those stacks of bills in the box seats, along with that note that curiously had been written 4 times, as if each of those women had left their own message. Now, I want to share something else that happened when I was working as an Uber driver. Honestly, I don't know what exactly occurred or if the 2 incidents were related, but I can tell you that when I thought there were 2 of us, there were actually 3. I'll focus only on that day, because it's the only part I feel like sharing. I started my shift at 5 in the morning. At that time, many students preferred to take a taxi or request an Uber ride through the app. I often picked up 3 or 4 passengers before 8 in the morning, which was a good number. Sometimes even more. By midday, I was doing great, feeling relaxed and calm. I could take the rest of the day easy, even taking my time to enjoy the lunch my mother had prepared, with no rush or schedule to worry about. I want to mention that although I'd never had any paranormal experiences, I did believe in such things. Maybe it was because of what my parents had taught me as a child, that just as there's also the opposite. The devil, Lucifer, or evil in general. Over the years, these names had taken on many forms, but their presence was real, and they manifested in different ways. By 5 p.m, I went to pick up a passenger who had requested a ride. He was a well-dressed man, carrying a briefcase, wearing a suit. His cologne filled the car, and I even joked about it, to which he laughed and responded in kind. We shared a few laughs, and then he began to tell me how tired he was. He was an accountant on his way to his second job, saying it would probably take him all night. It sounded like an interesting life, especially since I had never pursued higher education. I don't want to go into more details about that. Everything was going fine up until that point. Then, the man sitting in the back suddenly dropped his briefcase and became hysterical, pulling his feet up onto the seat, his eyes wide with panic, and started screaming, asking me who the woman sitting in the front passenger seat was. I quickly turned around, but there was no one next to me. Based on his reaction, I could tell he wasn't joking. But inside, I was questioning whether he truly saw a woman or if he was losing his mind. That possibility scared me more than the idea that he might be telling the truth. I stopped the car in the middle of the road at his urgent request. He hurriedly grabbed his briefcase and opened the door in a rush. I couldn't understand what was happening, but what happened next was even worse. No sooner had he stepped out of the car when a speeding vehicle hit him, killing him instantly. I was in shock. My heart was racing a mile a minute, but what truly left me shaken was what happened afterward. The front passenger door, which had been closed the entire time, suddenly opened by itself and then closed again, as if someone had gotten out, but I couldn't see who or what it was. That's when I realized that the man really had seen a woman in the front seat. I told my version of events to the police. I wasn't at fault, and they understood. Though they kept me under observation for a few days, I still don't understand what happened or why. These kinds of things are better left to God, and we just have to move on with our lives. I've never taken the time to write down an experience like this, but I think the world should know what I witnessed. Maybe it won't matter to anyone, but it's one more piece of evidence that demons really are here on earth among us, even though many people ignore that fact.